Jessica Kavana Dornbusch. You're listening to the Jan Price Show, and today my guest is writer-director Jessica Kavana Dornbusch, and we're going to be discussing her brand new movie entitled Reefa. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you about this film. I have to tell you, I was a mess after I watched it. I was
Oh,
literally, I don't know how many tissues I had to get, but I had to get quite a few. So I'm
oh, I'm
really,
sorry.
yeah, no, that's good. I always say that movies should move you in some way, whatever way it may be. If it's supposed to scare you, scare you. If it's supposed to
Yes,
touch you, touch your heart, then great. But whatever it is, that you laugh if it's a comedy. But this movie really did touch me, and even though I was aware of the story, it still
mhm.
had a huge impact on me. So our audience knows what the film is about. Can you give us a brief synopsis, Jessica?
Sure. Reefa is the story of a boy from Miami. His name was Israel Reefa Hernandez. Reefa was his artist name, who was an incredibly talented artist. He had just won an art scholarship, and he was spending the last summer in Miami with his friends, his family. He was falling in love for the first time before heading to New York on an art scholarship. And I'm going to give away a little bit of the ending, but it's part of the story, and it's been all over the news. He was one of the cases in 2013. He was killed by the Miami Beach police for painting a wall, an illegal wall. So that's the story of Israel's life, and we turned it into a feature film. And yeah, I mean, but the film is really dedicated to his life.
And it's such a amazing story, and here we are on the heels of getting justice for the death of George Floyd.
Yeah.
And and this film, it was amazing to me that there was no justice. I don't know if that's changed subsequently, but not only was there no justice, when you had at the end of the film that the police officer was promoted, that just
Yeah.
shocked me. So talk a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I was talking about with a friend of mine today about the difference between George Floyd and Israel's case, and obviously the main difference being that, for all intents and purposes, what helped George Floyd's case is the fact that it was filmed, and that somebody was courageous enough to put the entire thing on video. And I think that once you had it on video, the violence that these police officers exhibited was undeniable. And I think the jury saw that. In Israel's case, there was no footage, there was no video, and the police were able to use the argument that they've used many a time, which is that they were at risk, they were in danger, and that's why they needed to use a taser for an excessive amount of minutes right into Israel's heart in order to stop him. When there was six police officers against one 18-year-old kid with a skateboard. But I think those are the two main differences between their cases. Israel's family, the prosecutor never saw through any charges with the police officer. In fact, since I believe it's 1982, around then, no police officer in Miami Beach has ever been prosecuted for any kind of violence, even though there's been so many charges brought up against them, but they've just never gone through with any of them. They tried to do a civil case against the police officer, but they ultimately settled. They couldn't bear that the city was going to drag their son's name through the mud, in order to try to get these officers off, and they couldn't find themselves going through it again. And then the last thing is Israel's family, were guests in this country. They were here on an invited guests. I mean, they were here on an asylum visa, and they were waiting for their green cards, and they were doing everything they were supposed to be doing. They had their kids in school. The kids got great grades in school. They graduated. They got scholarships. They tried to do everything by the book. And the son, look, he made a mistake. He was a kid. He shouldn't have been painting the wall, but it was an abandoned building that was about to be torn down. And in most cases, that would have been a slap on the wrist. But for immigrants who constantly have a fear of, not getting their visa or being deported for the wrong reasons, they were extra careful. And unfortunately, it was the reason that he ran from the police that night. In a normal circumstance, he probably would have gotten a slap on the wrist, but in his case, he ran. He was scared he would jeopardize his parents' visa status, so he ran, and it ultimately killed him.
And it's just so tragic. I mean, here he is, this young man who is an aspiring artist and by all accounts a very good artist. And I guess that is a form of art, is painting buildings, and they have places where they actually allow them to do this, and many throughout the country, because they've seen that this is a way of expressing. And the building was going to be torn down. That's the other thing. The building was scheduled to be torn down. So, what also, now I know in the film, the police officer is depicted, I believe, is he also an immigrant? Is he also someone who immigrated to the U.S.?
He is. Listen, there's not much information on the police officer. Whatever I got from, certain people that told me and from his testimony during the court case. But he's an immigrant. He's a child of immigrants, just like Israel was. But unfortunately, there is, and we saw this in the last election. I mean, how many people did we know who were immigrants or children of immigrants that have an incredibly strong stance on future immigrants? It's sad. I mean, for me, the hypocrisy is pretty astounding.
It really is. I mean, I think all of us in America were pretty astounded when we saw that. Not only, you're in Miami, and in Florida, but we saw it, also in Texas and other places where there's a lot of, I'm in California, we have, same thing here. So it was surprising how the immigrants are, many of them are anti-immigrant. That's just
100%.
Yeah.
100%. We have a bunch of friends who, my husband's from Venezuela, and we actually lived in Venezuela as Chavez took power there. And we moved here, and many Venezuelans I knew suddenly were walking around with red hat. And listen, I don't want to turn this political, but they were walking around, in support of Trump. And I said, how can you support these policies? You're here. You were able to come. And they said, yeah, but now there's just too many. I'm like, okay.
Unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. It just truly is. It is. Wow. So how did you, you wrote this as well as directed it. So what made you decide to tell this story? Because you've decided to stay in Miami and do most of your films in Miami. Is that correct? Yes. Which I think is wonderful. I did, And, but so how did this particular story come to you? Why did you decide to tell this story?
I was approached by a producer about a year after Israel had passed away, and he was a producer at a local news station here that had been covering Israel's case quite a bit, and they had been covering as well the corruption with the taser company that ultimately killed him. So the producer called me and he said, I really would like to introduce you to Israel's family. I think this could make a wonderful feature film. And I was a little hesitant at first. Fruitville Station had just come out, and it's such a phenomenal film, and it had won Sundance. And I just didn't think there was room for two very similar stories. But it was when I met Israel's family, and I met them, and they were just such a wonderful family, and so not the prototypical immigrant family that you would imagine that this would happen to, that I said, I think that there's something here. And I really wanted to tell the story of that irony, of coming to this country, risking everything, losing everything that you've ever had to come to this country in order to save your kid's life, only to ultimately have it end by those sworn to protect and defend. And that was the part that I just felt it was so important to tell that aspect of the story. And then the more I got to know Israel and Israel's artwork and his passion and just what an incredible kid he was, I decided that instead of making the story about his death, I really wanted to make the story about this incredible kid and his journey and the struggles that he and his family went through. I just thought that would make the ending ultimately more impactful.
And it does. And what's so wonderful is, again, you are, we hear about so many, I mean, every time you turn around, there's another,
Yeah.
death by, somebody, a policeman. I'm so sorry to say it, but, shooting black and brown people and killing them
Yeah.
for virtually no reason at all. And
Yeah.
just minor, things like this is minor. And, and unfortunately, because I think we become numb. We become numb to the numbers,
Yeah.
and another mass shooting, how many more times can we hear that too? And we do,
Yeah.
we become more, because it's become so prevalent that we become numb to it. And so one of the things I did watch the George Floyd trial pretty intensely. I didn't watch every single
Yeah.
minute, but I watched a lot of it. And one of the things that came out in this trial is they made him a human being as much as the defense attorney tried to make him into some kind of monster. He was not. And
Right.
and so you've done the same thing with this film. I mean, this is a young 18-year-old who had his life ahead of him, who was excited about his life, and you're right, had just fallen in love, and the woman he had fallen in love was in New York, and he was going to New York, and so to have that, I mean, you just follow the story, and it's beautifully done. The story is beautifully
Thank
done. It truly is. It just takes you along, and it's just so well told and so well written and so well acted. And I do want to talk about the actors in this film, but you humanize who this young man is, because we lose sight that these are human beings who have a life, and that they're not just a number at all,
Right.
and let me just also say, let's go back to the tasing a little bit. So many people go, oh, well, like the shooting the other day, another young teenager, and they said, why couldn't they have tased her and everything? And to see your film, I mean, it's like tasing's not always 100% the answer either. Tasing can kill people. Now, have they changed that since this particular incident with Reefa?
In Miami, they did. They at least put body cameras on the police officers, so that was definitely an improvement. I'm not really sure where they are with the taser laws, but there are pretty clear restrictions on the way that you're supposed to handle and not handle a taser. And one of them is you're never supposed to shoot it right at the person's heart, which is what happened in this case. And I believe the taser comes out in 3-second increments. And in Israel's case, I don't even remember what the number was, but it was a crazy number for how many minutes of shock went into his body.
And according to your film, he has his hands up and everything. He's not struggling or doing anything.
Oh yeah, no, he was already there. They had him. They didn't.
Yeah,
I mean, completely. Listen. Granted, that's not what the police say, but we did have first person sources there. I mean, his two friends were there that night, and he was already surrounded by the time that they tased him.
And what's he going to do? Spray can them? Spray paint them. I mean,
no,
take a can of spray.
Yeah,
and spray
and
paint
to your
them.
point, I think it is important to humanize the victims. I mean, one of the loveliest things with George Floyd is how many people are posting the picture with he and his daughter on his shoulders.
Yes.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. And look, at the end of the day, the other police officer that is in the film that I added into the film, it was my way of saying, look, not all police officers are bad. I don't know if there was someone like that night. That was my creation, but I want to believe that I've met enough good police officers that somebody had to have been there trying to stop the situation. And hopefully those will eventually be the ones that win and stay and protect us, because they are in many times in situations of danger, and we do have to give them credit for that. It's unfortunate that the bad apples are really the ones getting all of the attention these days.
It is unfortunate, and yes, we do need the police. We need good police. We depend on them, and but it is scary. I won't even get into. I had a conversation with a friend about all of this. I said, "Well, you're not a black man. It's different getting stopped.
Right.
If you're a black man, than it is if you're a white man or a white woman, even for that respect too. So it's and that and
I mean, that's absolutely true.
Go ahead.
Oh no! At the screening the other night, we had a premiere a few nights ago, and we had a question and answer session afterward. And I was telling the audience an anecdote that happened to us during production, which is we were shooting the whole chase sequence very close to where Israel was killed. And, same police force monitors that area, but we had a permit and we had the right to be there. And they found out we were there. It was a mistake of one of the crew. We had something stolen, so they had to report it. And the police came and somebody told them what the movie was about. And they completely shut us down in an incredibly aggressive and violent way. They told us to basically get the hell out of Miami Beach and never come back.
Oh my goodness.
Shutting us down halfway through our scene, halfway through our film. It really affected us. It was hard. And more than that, I was completely in shell shock that this had happened. And I had tried to speak to one of the officers that night. And I said, please, can we talk about this? We have a permit to be here. And I can't repeat on air the words that he used, but it was really bad. And I said this to one of Israel's friends who was a consultant on the film. And she said, all right, imagine how scary that was for you. And you're surrounded by a 50-person crew and cameras. She said, now imagine you're a kid alone who's 18 years old. Mm-hmm. And I said, you're right. And it did put that moment, everything came into perspective in that moment.
Amazing. Well, obviously you were able to finish the film.
Yeah.
You went ahead and
We were, yeah, by I don't know. I mean, it's really remarkable we finished that film. I mean, Miami is a small film community and everybody really rallied and people from all different productions heard about what happened to us and showed up the next day to help us scout locations and find a location that would match the initial location and helped us put it together. It was a beautiful thing to watch what happened the next day.
Isn't it amazing? It's, when we have adversity and then good things come out of that adversity. We don't always expect that it will, but that is good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the young actor who plays the lead, Tyler Dean Flores, who plays Reefa. Yeah. He is absolutely adorable, just adorable.
He's adorable.
He's so good in this film. So how did you discover him? Because again, you're working in the Miami film industry. It's not Hollywood. You don't have as many actors and actresses to choose from, I would think.
Right.
So to find this young actor, actually the whole cast is wonderful. The whole cast.
Yeah, we did. We cast quite a bit of it in LA. I cast some of it locally, and Tyler actually came from a friend of mine. We had another actor initially attached to the role of Israel, and it didn't ultimately work out with him. And I was speaking to a friend who's a producer in New York, and he said, I think I have your guy. And he put Tyler on tape for me. Tyler, hadn't really been a lead. He had a film that he was close to the lead, but this was his first real leading role. And he put him on tape. And I just said, I mean, this is it. Tyler he reminded me of Basquiat. He reminded me of like one of those artists that just is, he can't even fake it in real life. He's just incredible. He's soulful. He's smart. He loves to create, and I just knew that on top of anything else, that those are the qualities I was looking for to represent Israel.
Well, then, yeah, when you say soulful, that's the perfect word for him, because that's what you see. You see his soul in this film, and you don't always see that with every actor on the screen, but you definitely see it with him.
Right.
And he was just he's absolutely, the whole cast is. Let's talk about the parents.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Is that George Sear is the father?
No. George Sear plays. George Sear is a wonderful young actor. He's the one who plays Etone, Israel's friend, the one who's drumming in the chase sequence.
Okay.
He's the one on the drums. He's an incredible young actor. He's on a show on Hulu right now called Love Victor. And he's a great actor. No, the parents are played by Jose Zuniga and Margarita Rosa de Francisco. She's a wonderful, really renowned Colombian actress. And Jose Zuniga is, just a force. He's incredible. He's been in a million different productions. He's been in so many productions with so many bigger directors and bigger productions, and he just could not have been more humble and wanting to tell the story and there for the right reasons.
Well, I knew he looked familiar to me. I know I've seen him in a number of things, and I was like, he just looks so familiar to me. He looks like Raul Julia. He could be his brother.
Yes, he does.
doesn't he? Who also we lost so young. We lost him so young. I loved Raul Julia.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, very. So again, was it hard to cast this film? Did it take a long time to find the actors that could embody these wonderful people and real, these real life people?
Yeah, I mean, no, compared to everything else with the film, that the casting was actually a really easy aspect of it. We Once we had the financing, I think we cast the entire film in about a month or two. I went out to LA, and in defense of these, not in defense really, in the credit to these actors, Latino actors haven't always gotten their due, and they most of the actors, when they found out about the story, and I'm saying most of the actors, even the ones that came to the audition that weren't ultimately cast, were so passionate about getting this film onto the screen that they were willing to do it for our small budget and just help out and do anything they needed to do to help us tell the story.
How long did it take you to make this film?
It in total about 7 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, Israel was killed in 2013, and I started about a year after that. And it took 5 years to get the financing together, where it came together and fell apart so many different heartbreaking times. And then we finally had the financing and got into pre-production, cast it, filmed it, and then we had it ready to go. I was doing our sound mix in Los Angeles early of March last year, and we were supposed to screen it here in Miami on March 12th for the Miami Film Festival. We had a 1,500 person screening, and that was the day that the world got shut down.
Oh my goodness.
So I know.
Did you have the screening or not have you didn't have the screening?
We didn't. Everything got closed that day. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, but so we just did. We just had our big Miami screening, and it was beautiful.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Where can people see this film, Jessica?
Yeah. So the film is out in theaters, but mostly in Miami, and nationally it's out on every digital platform. It's on Apple and Amazon Prime and Vudu and Samsung and Google Play and On Demand and other digital platforms. I don't know, but it's out on almost all of them.
Wonderful. I want people to really look for this film, Reefa. We're gonna it's definitely one that you definitely want to watch. What are you working on now? Do you have any other projects that you're working on now?
I do. I'm working on several others. One of them is a pretty big one that will hopefully be announced soon, which is really exciting. And it's light and fun. And I think that I'm really excited about that. I think that right now our world needs some lightness. So I'm excited to get started on that.
I agree. I mean, there was, I don't know if you watched Bill Maher, but he was talking about the Oscar nominees, and he called them Debbie Downer movies and everything. And I was like, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I really had a hard time watching a lot of them. It's my job to do that, because I just, during the pandemic, I just wanted something light. And, I was doing, Hallmark love stories, just almost, not quite. But,
exactly,
I just wanted things that would just
take steel books.
Yeah, I mean, just take you away from it. We don't want anything heavy. But I do want to be moved when I do watch a movie. Yeah. And this film, really, it's beautifully put together, beautifully directed, written, and well acted, and just a lovely, lovely film. And I really highly recommend to everyone that you seek out Reefa, Reefa. It's well worth your time and energy to watch it. And even though it's about a topic that, is sad, it's very uplifting. And I loved the end credits, how you put that together.
Oh, yeah.
Was that easy for you to find the footage to do that?
Yeah, again, there was something about this story that just everybody wanted to help. A lot of times, with credits like this that were shot by news footage or different people, they're hard to track down, and sometimes people want a lot of money for them. And this time we called them, we told them what the situation we were in and what we were trying to do, and everyone just responded right away and handed over anything they had. It was incredible.
That's great. And it was amazing how
Yeah.
much the actors did look like the real people in
Yeah.
this film. That was also pretty amazing
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah, no, I mean, we tried, there's things we had to take some creative liberties with. It's not easy to tell, 18 years worth of a life into 96 minutes, but we definitely tried with that at least.
well, Jessica, I wish you much success with this film, Reefa.
Thank you,
Everybody
Jen.
seek it out. Thank you for being on the show.
Aw, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure. Thank you.
A pleasure is mine, truly. You can listen to the Jan Price Show anywhere and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. We're on almost every podcast network there is, including the iHeart Podcast Network, Spotify, Google Play. You find us, well, we're there. You'll find us. And also you can go to thejanpriceshow.com where all the shows are archived. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Jan Price Show. Thank you for listening.